welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode for the Penguin, episode 6. Brought here on the Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey! We got so much to discuss in this episode. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the episode, go and watch it, come on back, or if you don't care, stick around because we're going to spoil the hell out of this particular episode. A lot to discuss in this one. It is episode 6, Gold Summit. But before we do, we should introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor, an animation writer, and now a commercial actor. John, I still haven't, we keep forgetting to talk about this.
I keep forgetting to text you, guys. 100% correct. And I apologize to everybody if my voice is a little rattled, but my Washington Commanders won on a Hail Mary yesterday, and I screamed my face off. And I was at medieval times screaming for the Knights of the Realm on Saturday night. So there's hardly any voice left for me. But this episode 6 is called Gold Summit. Is directed by Kevin Bray. This one's written by Nick Town, who some of you may know as a writer and story editor for 10 episodes. One of my favorite series from the recent few years here, the Manhunt Unabomber series, where Paul Bettany played Ted Kaczynski. If you guys haven't watched that one, I highly, highly recommend you all watch that series. Sam Worthington in that one as well. But this one picks up several weeks later. This episode does in the world of the Penguin, as Oz and Vic attempt to find a way to unleash bliss on the streets of Gotham while Sofia and Sal conspire to take down the Penguin. And we have more with Francis's mother, whose condition is deteriorating day by day as we go along, hour by hour as we go along in this episode as well. So a lot to dive into. Michael, your overall thoughts here in episode 6, Gold Summit, please.
Great. This is just teeing us up for a rock and rolling last 2 episodes. For anyone that kind of early on was saying that this was a show that didn't feel like it wanted to be a comic book show, we have seen Oz Cobb go from the beginnings of this show to where he is in this episode, delivering an epic supervillain monologue in his penguin coat. And that doesn't even touch on Sofia Gigante, who this show might have solidified her. As much as Sofia Gigante comes from some very, very popular Batman graphic novels, this performance, I think, has catapulted Sofia Gigante to a higher status of Batman villain. So I think the whole show is amazing. I think this episode really hit home some of the bigger themes that Matt Reeves explored in the Batman and that they've continued to explore here about just the different levels of class warfare in Gotham, the upper class and the lower class, and like in big ways and small ways, in both Sal and Sophia's story and then Oz and Victor's story, you're really seeing the 2 extremes of Gotham, from the very height of Falcone Mansion all the way down to the sewers. So this had so much good stuff. I can't wait to talk about it. Also, John, you're completely wrong about Victor, and I can't wait to talk about that too. So I
can't wait to talk about how right I am. I can't wait to talk about it. But then again, who knows? Shannon might be right, as Sofia ends with a crowbar watching him dance with an old lady there. Shannon, your thoughts on this episode 6 Gold Summit? What stood out to you? What worked for you? And we'll get into the specifics in just a second.
What they're able to do week after week is just increase the complexity of all of these characters. And, you always talk about, like, a great villain is the villain who thinks they're right. And Oz knows that he is underhanded, but ultimately he feels he's doing the right thing because he's, in his mind, he is just like, I am taking care of my mom. I'm going to be what this Rex Calabrese character was. I'm going to do the right thing for people. And matching that dynamic with Sofia. It's just so well done. Between this, again, and Agatha all along, it's not a competition. I think as comic book fans, as pop culture fans, having 2 shows from different companies that are both continually upping their game each episode, the winners here are us. But honestly, this is like watching a home run derby between 2 batters that are just continually hitting dingers, hitting cars in the parking lot. It's just so well done. Love the coat, and it's justified because it's cold and they don't have electricity, so he has to wear this giant coat, and he looks like the classic Penguin. It is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some umbrella references if you catch that light shade in Eve's apartment, and also, yes, you're right. Winter has come to Gotham City in essence, if I can use a Game of Thrones reference. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode as well. This is one of those episodes, and Mike, I think you said it well. It sets us up for what's coming here in these last 2 episodes of the season, which is a shame to even think about that this thing is almost over, 2 weeks away from being over. And we get Agatha, as you mentioned, Shannon. That's over this week with those 2 episodes coming up later on this week. So as the kids say, we as comic book superhero fans, we are eating well right now with both of these shows. For sure. I love the writing here. Really enjoyed how you're watching Penguin do evil stuff, manipulating Victor, getting into positions of power, screwing over Sal, pushing a bunch of bullshit about the Gold Summit and, eat the rich and all that nonsense, which really serves him more than anything else. And then having these really tender, heartbreaking, tough moments with his mom and his mom asking him to kill her. Like, that is so just devastating. And as I think you said this, Michael, it rounds out these characters so well, the writing and performances and the way this is all shot from top to bottom. So it's so much fun to enjoy this series in the pace that it's going at. I don't know. And I've tossed away this idea that the Batman needs to show up. Please don't show up. Let us enjoy this. Maybe show up later after it's all been settled for right now. All right, let's get into this. The way I've done the show is I'm going to break it down between the Penguin's going to be in 2 sections, then Victor, then Sofia. So that's how we're going to do it. So the episode opens with a pulsating music cue with Oz telling us that the business is thriving while Sofia and Sal are making moves. It clearly feels like it's been a few weeks later or a couple of months later or a few months later. He tells Vic that they need more gangs on board while still keeping this Bliss operation kind of quiet, and that Zhao from the Triads, who we met a few episodes ago, is interested in their work and their business, which means they could go international. He also has a weird exchange with Victor. I don't know how many of you guys caught this, but he was saying like, when our names are going to be remembered, Victor Aguilar and Oswald Cobblepot. And he looks at him like he doesn't want to share the credit. Just put a pin in that in my mind. Put a pin in that. But there are power issues affecting the business, affecting Crown Point, which mandates him paying a visit to Councilman Handy and his nose with pliers to get him to ration the power better to Crown Point. Who's this played by? My own Theo Rossi, Reese Quiro, who I'm not a big fan of as an actor, but he's in this one because I was terrible in She-Hulk. I just want to make sure that's clear so no one gets that twisted. But we do find out later when he gets a call from the Sullivans because Sofia and Sal have killed 3 of the corner boys for the Sullivans. The Sullivans are pissed. So this mandates a meeting. He sets up a meeting here. But after he hears about the Sullivans, he realizes, oh my God, now they're going to, no one's going to buy Bliss. So I've got to set up a meeting and I'm going to flood Gotham with free Bliss. So essentially putting it into the gang's territories and creating demand for it. And this causes a summit to happen, the Gold Summit. All the gang leaders meet up. He delivers a William Wallace Braveheart speech about they're the blue-collar working man and those are the rich and we're going to go after them. And eventually everybody opens a beer to agree with Oz, including Zhao, and he set up his power structure. We'll get to Oz and his mom after this section, but Michael, I want to get your thoughts. What did you think of Oz's moves and his power grab here over this throughout this episode?
Well, again, I mean, as we said, this entire series is amazing because you see Oz take like 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back and then 4 steps forward and 2 steps back. Like it's just a constant churn of he is constantly clawing his way into what he wants. I think opening with Victor on the motorcycle, I did think of our good buddy, the Outlaw here, almost shot for shot. Robert Pattinson riding his motorcycle through the sewers of Gotham. So you could absolutely look at that as, oh, look at Victor the hero. But I think they're just kind of doing the inverse here. I mean, you're seeing Victor really step into this bigger, larger than life world of what Gotham City is. And him kind of being the guy coming in with the money. Like, I mean, he's definitely looking a lot more comfortable in his role with
Don't jump ahead. We're going to get to Victor later. Don't jump ahead.
I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. It's the opening of the episode. But to your point also, I kind of think that Oz, I'm going to say something that my buddy John is going to disagree with here. I don't think it is a full picture of the relationship between Oswald and Victor to constantly say that Oz is manipulating Victor. I think there's definitely moments where he's manipulating Victor, but Oz absolutely sees in Victor a younger version of him. He is absolutely, in his own way, trying to give Victor the tools to claw his way out of where he was in Crown Point and become a power player in Gotham. And so I think when he does say to Victor, hey, you and me, Victor and Oz, like, he is genuine there. Like, he's saying, I'm going to lift you up, buddy. Like, because just like every time he talks about Rex Calabrese, what he loves more than anything, what he craves, is not necessarily money, is not necessarily just power. What he craves is the love and loyalty of everybody. He wants everyone to look at him and say, this is the guy. This is the guy who helped me. Like, it's literally, he says it almost every episode. He loves being in the position that he is right now, like doling out that money. Like, you can just see the joy as he's passing out that money to everyone. Tell him you're in construction. Yeah, like, he loves being in this position. Like, it's absolutely amazing. And again, when Sofia and Sal make their move and start hanging people up and cutting off people's pinkies in a reference to what Oz did to Alberto, he's kind of on his heels again, and he makes another giant decision. He's like, let me just flood the streets. Like, we've got enough of bliss. Let me just give everybody a freebie, remind everybody that this is the new drug on the street that everybody wants, so that even if people are scared to deal it, the demand is going to be so high that they have to. So he just keeps kind of like, it's this cat and mouse thing back and forth. But when push comes to shove, and we kind of build to this moment in the episode where he makes his big speech, as I already said, just visually, he's in the coat. He's looking more like the Penguin that we know. But I do think it's great. In contrast to scenes earlier, which we'll get to later, with Sal and Sofia drinking wine, he brings beers. Like, every aspect of this show is we are the common people. We are not the fancy schmancy people in their fancy schmancy houses. I've loaded a cooler in the back of this truck with beers, and I'm going to hang it out to you guys because we're all the same. And I think one of the brilliant things about this speech that he gives at the end at the Gold Summit is they allow Zhao and some other people to say all the stuff that you would say. Like, at no point of this show do they let Oz off easy. It's not just that he gives this stirring speech that inspires all of the different factions of Gotham City's crime bosses. Like, they're like, this guy's a fucking liar. He has double-crossed every single person. Like, there is no way we can trust this guy. And he cops to everything. Yeah, I killed Alberto. I did this. Like, he cops to, I double-crossed Sofia. I did all of it. But it allows him to give this super powerful speech that's like, I did it because I had to. Because I got nothing. Like, it is this passionate speech that is, again, a great supervillain doing his supervillain monologuing. But at the same time, it's a speech that says, we're all garbage. Like, we all have had to claw our way to the top. So you can't get mad at me for doing what I had to do. And all I'm doing is saying, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of it. Like, together we can do this. And man, when everybody opened those beers, I was like, this is some shit right here. Like, it was just amazing. And what you're really seeing here is they've sort of took the idea of what the Penguin was from the comics, and Matt Reeves said, let's just go way back and make this guy Oz Cobb and make a very realistic, grounded thing that isn't really the Penguin. But now we've got this guy that is organizing all the crime bosses, is wheeling and dealing. He's like moving up the ladder. And if we get to where I think we're going to get to by the end of this season, we'll get to the Batman 2, and Oz Cobb is going to be a power player in Gotham, much like Oswald Cobblepot is in the comics. So I think they've just done an amazing job with his story.
Yeah, he pitches them that they'll have more territory and power if they work together. Yeah, Shannon, what are your thoughts here on Oz's business moves, how he deals with the Bliss setbacks? Are these smart moves, and then ends up at that Gold Summit, and how he's able to convince them? Did you buy it? What did you think of the actions, and did you buy it that he was able to convince everybody to get on board with him, even though they know he's a liar?
He is constantly thinking on his feet. I mean, it is curious. Like, I don't think they specifically say how much time has passed, but the way the operation has grown in a relatively short amount of time. Not only do mushrooms apparently thrive in the derelict subways of Gotham, but just the way that the operation has been built. Like, the last time we saw it, it was Oz and Vic.
Yeah,
that was it. Now, like, they have all these generators, they have people, they clearly have a line of production that is based out of this area. And again, just from a set design point of view, it's just visually dynamic. There's a lot of activity. You see the generators sparking, you know, they're trying to get things up and running, but you can see this is a man in his element, and being in charge, he does a good job.
Yeah.
When the circumstances are right, he does a good job. And when the circumstances are wrong, he is able thus far to pivot. Now, sometimes those pivots take a little bit longer, but at this point, I mean, Oz is a survivor, and that is what he is doing. Yeah. I mean, I know we're going to get into Vic, but also that the impression that we're getting from an audience, Vic was a kid with a backpack not that long ago. Now he's a guy. Now he's a man. He's a young man on a motorcycle. We know that he's strapped. I mean, you can just see the way the operation has grown. When you get to the moment that he finds out that the triads, the deal with the triads is done, and you see, like, he literally comes up with the light bulb idea.
Yeah.
That, like, I couldn't give it away if I couldn't give it away even if I wanted to. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe that's what we do. And the way that they are able to lean into the classic tropes of the Penguin, the way that Vogel had already talked about, there is a theme that they are slowly building in terms of music. That they played it last time. They're playing it this time. And again, it's not distinct enough and it's not prevalent enough to be able to hum it yet. But my guess is we're going to hear that theme in the Batman Part 2. But also when he realizes, like, this is what we're going to do, he's got a cigar. And again, you see him take a big puff of this cigar. And again, it's like, that's just that visual trope of what we expect from the Penguin, along with that giant coat. The moment that he goes and shakes down Johnny, one of Johnny's favorite actors, with a pair of pliers, you know, like any kid who had a dad with tools, you see a pair of pliers, like, what happens if I do this? Yeah. And it's like, wow, that really hurts. Knowing that everyone kind of has an idea of what pliers feel like, and knowing that it is grabbing the soft part of someone's nose and the excruciating amount of pain that is going on. That was just a great scene. And again, it's just such a wise guy thing. Like, you don't want to be my pal no more. You don't want to be my pal no more. Like, it's just so evocative of gangster films that have come before it. And like, as he's just going like, come on, it's just your nose, get the fuck out of here. And he has these great little, Colin Farrell has these great moments that I have to think they're improvisations, that they're literally just letting the camera run. Kalinowski actually brought one up too from earlier in the season, where a car comes and Oz stops, and it's like that moment, who's going, like, go, as he's helping him back out, like, go on, you got more room than you think. Yeah. Like, that type of moment is so authentic. And I think that's the thing that makes it so interesting. Across the board with their exposition is in a story is what the audience has to know for you to go forward. And sometimes exposition can be an absolute killer on your momentum. The fact that their exposition is so entertaining because we enjoy watching these characters so much. That big speech at the end, again, I mean, Vogel kind of hit it all, but him admitting, like, this is the reality that we live in. I'm the one that's leaning into it. We have an opportunity now to upset the apple cart. Like who's with me? Again, the whole dynamic between the beer and the wine, fantastic.
Yeah, this is, for me, it was about focusing on the genius, and I will use that term, genius of the Penguin. Genius isn't always Albert Einstein. Sometimes it's genius because you can think on your feet, figure out the right move in the moment. Whether it's looking at a token going, okay, now that's an idea. I'm going to rip everything apart. I'm going to take on this massive operation. I'm going to set this up underneath Gotham's tunnels. No one's going to see me coming. Even Sal calls him a weed, which makes sense, coming up from the ground, yet they can't see where he's coming. And I love that idea. And these are the things that where Penguin really thrives. And that's why he's such an interesting character, because you admire the smarts, you admire his ability to do these things, but he also has this really dangerously overdeveloped need to be liked. dangerously overdeveloped need to be respected. And that's what leads him to these moments that are more criminal based. I mean, as Michael, I know he believes what he believes. I do think a lot of what the Penguin is doing is manipulation. It doesn't mean it's conscious. It's just secondhand nature to him to do these things to put himself in a position. He manipulates all the gang leaders to come with him by flooding their territories with the bliss. He manipulates Vic a little bit later and then tells him it's not the only time you're going to have to kill, in essence, by saying it gets easier. These are these little pocket manipulations that he's doing to keep people in positions that benefit him. And they always benefit him. He's never even when he's serving the people by going like, you better flood Crowd Point with power by the morning. It's because he needs his operation to run well and he needs his mom to get heat. It isn't because he's a man of the people. It is always in service of him. So it gets mixed up, which makes it really a fun watch for us who enjoy complex characters in series and in shows. And the moves he makes make sense in the moment. And because they feel organic and he's coming up with them in the moment, you respect that, enjoy that while he's going forward. So he's building into a formidable foe. Because don't forget, he was Carmine's he was underneath Carmine in the Batman. This is him building to the position where he takes over Carmine's essential operation. Hope maybe by the end of the series or sometime in the Batman Part 2. And you've got to believe that he's able to do all the things that he's doing. I do think the Gold Summit thing came a little too easily, but, we only have 8 episodes and it is what it is, because I think the gang leaders would be a little more pissed than they actually were, but you got to make it work in the situation that it is, but you respect it and what have you. But Shannon, let's turn to his relationship with his mom. What are your thoughts on this throughout this episode? We see that Francis's episodes are getting worse. Her condition is getting bad. We see that moment with Oz and her and Victor at the table when he's serving the eggs, and Victor trying to be nice says, tries to essentially pretend to be one of Oz's brothers in order to calm her down and whatever. She talks about Rex Calabrese. Oz doesn't like that Victor does that, yells at him. And then later, Oz finds her in the bathtub in freezing water. God knows how long she's been in there. And then they have that exchange in the doorway where she says, you got to take me out. You got to take me out when the time comes. Personally, my father had that conversation with me when he asked me if he should kill himself when the cancer had gotten so hard. Would it be a negative thing? So those of us who've dealt with people we've lost in life, who have those desperate moments in the height of their pain, it is so devastating to experience that. I thought the episode captured that beautifully. What did you think of the relationship between him and Francis all the way through this episode in particular?
I mean, again, you're just making these characters so complex that even though this is a toxic relationship that they have, at the end of the day, she still is, it's his mom, and he loves his mom, and she loves her son. I mean, you see how hard he can be, but then you can see how tender he is with her as well. And also with Vic later, he's very tender with him. That moment where she, again, that passage of time, it's like, is she used to Vic or she thinks Vic is one of Oz's brothers? And you find out she thinks he's one of Oz's brothers. And that's like, oh, you're such a good boy. You're such a good boy. Again, the dynamic, I know we'll talk about Sofia and Sal, but the dynamic of them making this nice meal in this opulent kitchen. And then the power goes out in Oz's kitchen. And it's like cooked enough. Like that's all we need. That's good enough. But the moment where Vic leans into this nurturing side that he has of himself, because I know there are certain schools of thought that when you have someone in your life who is suffering with their memory, like they have some sort of illness, that the way to get them out of that is not that hard stop that Oz does. Yeah. Where it's like, I'm not Dad, I'm Oz, whereas Vic is trying to slowly and gently, like, oh yeah, Jack's doing this, like trying to nurture. And you can see Oz does have genuine affection for Vic, because even though like that pissed him off, he didn't do what he could have done. He was just like, hey, you don't get to talk about my brother. That's off limits. The moment where you can see her in the tub, where he comes in and she's been in this freezing water for God knows how long, and you can see the synapses in her brain, they just aren't firing correctly because she's an older woman with a condition. And it is so heartbreaking. The terrible things that she has said to him, but at the same time, she's like, you need to do this for me. you are my good boy. You're going to be okay. You're my good boy. You're my strong boy. Again, it makes these relationships so interesting. And in a show like this, there really is no, and they talk about it later in a different storyline, but there is no black and white in this world. It is very, very gray. And the moment that power comes back on and she's confused at the end, and you see Vic go and get her, and like they start dancing, like, oh my gosh, it is so heartbreaking when you see someone who has been awful, but it's like, you are still a human. And this is so gut wrenching. But yes, excellent storyline.
Yeah, Deidre O'Connell doing a wonderful job. The challenging complexity of a character that's like this. Michael, your thoughts on this relationship that Oz and Francis have throughout this episode and what it leads to there in their conversation there in the doorway?
I think it's great that with a show that is barreling towards this giant gang war and Batman villains and Gotham City, that we took the time to spend with Oz and Francis. I mean, I think kind of to what you were talking about Oz's motivations off of what I was saying, I think this is what makes Oz such a great character, because we're both right, we're both wrong. It doesn't matter. Oz represents this blend of someone who is completely selfish and also wants to be loved and respected. I mean, if you really look at it, look at Carmine Falcone and Sal Maroni. Carmine Falcone is a cold-hearted piece of shit who would sell out anybody, including his daughter.
Yeah.
Sal Maroni cares very deeply about his family and is broken up that his family is gone.
Yep.
Oz is both of them at the same time. Like, that's what makes Oz fascinating. Like, is he always on some level manipulating? 100%. Does he also crave love and affection and think he's doing right by people and wants them to think he's a good guy? 100%. And that sort of, both of those things battling it out for every single choice he makes is what's amazing. And the part of him that we get to see that is the most genuine is him with Francis. So Shannon's absolutely right. You know, the scene with the breakfast coming literally right after the Sal Sofia scene in the kitchen that we saw, just the contrast is very clear. You know, the power's going out, it's cooked enough, like it's eggs and some sausage. Like, there's nothing fancy about this meal in this in this shitty apartment in the worst part of Gotham that is ravaged by a flood. I mean, it doesn't get any more extreme. And yeah, I think that you really see that Oz doesn't want to admit, like, what Victor does for Francis is sort of feed into the fact that, like, we all know that you're going, so let's just make it as nice as possible. And Oz doesn't want it because he wants his mom to be okay. On some, like, visceral level, if you admit that she is that far gone that you have to do that, that says she's that far gone. So the way he shuts Victor down, although I think Shannon makes a really good point that you can tell that he shuts him down the way you would shut a loved one down, not the way you would shut down someone who is your employee who you don't care about.
Right.
And I think that's I think that's a really, really good point. But yeah, you just really are seeing, like, the degradation going extreme. And look, that scene where she's in that bathtub and she's like, don't look at me, and her embarrassment, but also her helplessness. I mean, holy shit, like, just brutally heartbreaking. And her telling Oz in that moment of clarity, as Johnny kind of really poignantly referred to, like, you know, if I don't want to be that, you got to do this. And him being like, Ma, don't ask me that. I mean, this is probably the most honest we've seen Oz. This is probably one of the very few moments where there's no manipulation. There's no, how can I spin this? This is just a raw, like, this is the one tether. Well, I think he has two tethers, and I think they're probably about to get beaten out in the next episode. So we'll see. But this is one of the tethers he's got to goodness in his life. And then, like, I think that, you know, getting the power back on, he will absolutely say to anybody that he got the power turned back on in Crown Point for the people. Yeah, I did it for the people, just like Rex Calabrese. He did it because he needed power down in the sewers, but I mean, I think a big part of him did it because he wanted Mom to have her power, to have her music. I mean, there's just this, like, he went and, like, put the pliers on somebody because Mom needed some heat. So I mean, I think the whole thing here, it just really does balance him out in this fascinating way, because he is this horrible guy. He is this bad person clawing his way to the top, But boy, that and his relationship with his mom is 100% toxic. But this episode really just made you feel for her. So I thought they did a really nice job with it.
You know, people have been talking about Kristen Milioti and Colin Farrell, and even Renzi Felice possibly for nominations. But I think Deidre O'Connell, as you know, a guest star nomination or I don't know how the nomination will go there. I think she should absolutely get a nomination. This is a limited series for her work here, because the more screen time they give her, the more levels and layers she brings to Francis. That, like you said, Michael, it's 100%, and Shannon too, 100% of a toxic relationship. But you sympathize with her. You kind of are there with her a little bit. Sorry about that. You're there with her a little bit, and you're invested in what's happening with their relationship, and that can be devastating, and gives you a new prism to look at Oswald at. He becomes more of a tragic figure than necessarily an evil one overall. And I love that. Yeah.
And even beyond just the I'm gonna kill you if you need it, the tenderness of Oz putting makeup on his mom.
Yeah, and the necklace.
I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful scene.
Yeah.
And a pretty good makeup artist too.
Well, I was like, he's not bad. He's not bad.
Yeah, it probably isn't the first time he's done it. Remember when she talked about, like, they went out dancing when she finally wanted to get over the death of the boys? And I wonder how much guilt he carries if he's killed his brothers over increasing her condition or causing this condition. Yeah. He's not that smart about this kind of stuff. So maybe he carries a little bit of guilt of that as well within him. And by the way, they do reveal in the episode, Penguin kind of references that she has Lewy body dementia, which is, of course, what Robin Williams had. And so if any of you are interested in discovering more about that, you can go to lbda.org, which is the foundation that's set up there to talk about it and to help if that's something that anyone you know is afflicted by, or if this affected you watching it as well in the episode. Just wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's move on to Victor. Now that we're all friends, let's move on to Victor. Vic is driving a motorcycle now, packing some heat and handling duffel bags full of money, as the two gentlemen referenced here on the show. Later at Crown Point, he tries to calm Francis down by pretending to be one of Oz's brothers, as we said here. And then later, Vic gets approached by Squid. Oh, Squid, who wants in on this thing with Oz and even threatens to attack Francis to get it. But when Vic talks to Oz about it, after confirming that the Bliss plan worked to flooding the gangs with free Bliss, gang territories with free Bliss, Oz is too preoccupied with the generator and his mom to help. So Vic tries to pay Squid off later, but Squid pulls an asshole move that gets him shot in the neck by Vic, and he bleeds out and dies. Vic is clearly torn up about it in the moment, torn up about it later. He goes to Oz, and they essentially have I'm not going to say what I did, but you understand what I did kind of exchange between the both of them. Oz calms him down, hugs him, kind of like a father to a son or an older brother to a younger brother, but also says to him, it gets easier as you do it, and then sends him to go back to the Crown Point apartment. Later, when he's at the Crown Point apartment, when the power comes back on, Vic dances with Francis after she wakes up suddenly because of the power and the music coming on, which she had said earlier. She wants her music. So they dance. This is a weird dance that is very strange, but it's a dance there as Sofia looks on, which we'll talk about later. All right, Michael, your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Vic? Go ahead.
Well, I loved it. I love this episode because every 5 seconds with Victor, I was like, well, Johnny gonna feel this way. But look, I think, John said very early on in these reviews that he thought that Victor could be, they could be going down the road of turning him into a Robin. And I think he's not wrong, except he's 100% wrong about whose Robin it is. Victor's not a hero. Like, Victor, in the world that we are inhabiting, Victor is the Penguin's Robin. Like Oz is the mentor. Oz has pulled Victor out of the situation that he was in. He has risen him up. He has shown him the ropes. He is training him in all of the things that he has learned growing up. And we are watching Victor go down that path. So yeah, seeing him come in on that motorcycle, just like Batman does in the movie, or like as Shannon said, he's stepped up at this point. However long it's been for all of those mushrooms to grow, Victor has been doing everything. He's been on the streets. He's been delivering stuff. He's been getting the money. Like he's much more adept now than he was when he spilled all that bliss in the club, stressing me out deeply when I saw all that bliss on the floor. And then, you know, like, I think what you really see here is you see he's been handling Francis, like there's that relationship there. But when Squid shows up, you do see him sort of revert back into, this is a guy, like, you always do that thing when you haven't seen someone in a while, you revert back and there is this intimidation. Like, he's a little bit intimidated. He doesn't quite know what to do. So he goes to Oz, but in a really nice moment, when he realizes that Oz is so focused on his mom and what's happening there and how real, and like Oz has that great speech about like the doctors say this and the doctors say that. And then he's like, what was it you needed? And Victor in that moment is like, I gotta do this on my own. Yeah. I'm not gonna bother him with this. And again, it's this really mentor mentee kind of relationship that is very kind of being well rounded out and nice. And then you just know what's going to go down. And so it was so funny. So I'm watching this scene and I'm like, well, this is where he shoots Squid, and I'm right and John's wrong. So then he shoots him in the neck and is so broken up about it. I'm like, well, now Johnny's going to say he's right. Now Johnny's going to say he's right because he's really broken up about this. But then you go and you have this lovely moment with him and Oz. Like, there again, is Oz manipulating him? Probably. He's always manipulating everyone to a degree. But that moment where he looks at Victor and like realization dawns on him and he goes, "Is it your first time?" Did he? Or no? What did he say? He goes, "Were you caught? Did you? Did anybody
get away clean?
Did you get away
clean? That's what it is. Yeah. Did you get away clean?" And it's just in that one moment. And then Victor's like, "Yeah, I think I did." And like, it just so much was said that wasn't said, and you just really felt it. Like in that moment, Oz said the exact, whether there were selfish reasons or not, it's exactly the right thing, and like holds him and hugs him, and you're like, and he's like, it's gonna get easier, and you're like, fuck, man, like this is the moment, like you are Oz's guy. And then gets the power back on, dancing with Francis, and I just there is a very famous sidekick that is beaten to death famously in a Batman comic with a crowbar. And so when you see like there are two people that I think are, we can talk about Eve in a minute. We'll get to her in the Sofia story. There are two people that in this series Oz cares about the closest, that he has a genuine emotion, and it's Victor and his mom. Yeah. And you got a Batman villain with a crowbar standing there watching the two of them. And so at that point, I was like, well, fuck it. I think me and John are both wrong, and Shannon's probably right. So we're going to see how that goes. So, but like, again, all just great performances all around, and just great, interesting, complicated, nuanced characters throughout.
Yeah. Shannon, your thoughts on Victor and his actions in this episode? Killing Squid, dancing with Francis, and trying to, and then seeing himself, as you said, becoming more of a kind of a man. Renzi Felice looked bigger in this episode. Looked like he'd even matured between the last episode and this episode. What do you think of his stuff here?
Well, even when he pops his helmet off, like, and this is this probably was not in the show. This is me kind of, it's my headcanon. I'm like, I feel like he has more scruff on his chin. Like he is literally growing up. He is becoming a man before our eyes. Yeah. And even though, like, yes, he is at his heart, you can tell that he was a good kid. He is a good person. The circumstances that he finds himself in, that it is the path that I don't think he can turn back from now. Like, he is on this path. The moment that he does shoot Squid, I'm like, that, as we said before we started recording, I'm like, I think that Robin cape is getting further away right now. But for a moment when he's telling Oz about Squid, like, there's this guy, and for a moment I'm like, is this an Oz manipulation, or is he so preoccupied that he doesn't actually, he can't process what Vic is saying right
Good
now.
Point.
Part of me is like, is this another, like, he just doesn't want to deal with this, and so he's kind of like, here's all my shit. What was it you needed again? Yeah. And the moment that you see Vic try to do the right thing, try to do the good thing in a bad situation, like, you know what, I'm going to just try to buy this guy off. Because at the end of the day, I don't think Vic doesn't want to kill him. Like, Vic doesn't want to take a life.
Right.
But he is put in a position, he's like, I cannot run the risk of taking this guy underground. There's too much at stake here. So his only option that he saw was to shoot him. And yes, the moment that he is sort of witnessing the result of his actions, yeah, I mean, it's traumatic for him. Like he's literally saying, I'm sorry. Like, you fuck, why did you make me do this? Yeah. the tenderness that Oz has with him. The first thing he says, "Did you get away? Did you get away clean?" Then it's like it gets easier. And that is again, it's sort of like you are in this life now. Like you are already on the path. You are 100% in this life now. Watching him with Francis, you see that kind of joyous moment. And if you watch the coming attractions for next week, in my head, I'm like, okay, say he does make it out of this, whatever these people are going to do to him before Oz gets there.
Yeah.
I don't think in his headspace is the only way to combat this is to be good. I think in his headspace, if he survives, the only way to combat this is to be worse. That's how I'm kind of taking it, that he is 100%. If he makes it out, he's a bad guy. But I don't think he's making it out of the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Michael kind of said some of my points already. I think they keep showing you that he's a good guy. His instincts are to do good. His instincts are to not kill, not to hurt, not to maim. Yes, he's packing a gun. Yes, he's getting money. And yes, you can say, well, he's helping to get people addicted to drugs. So how good of a person is he? Absolutely. That's all fair criticism for sure. But I keep going back to this as a young kid who was right after the death of his parents, being taken up by this stronger, older dude who was essentially grooming him into his criminal empire. It doesn't have to be nefarious. It doesn't have to be mean. It's just the way it's all mixed up. And he's kind of messing Vic up even more here by mixing in the criminality with a mentor relationship. It's all getting mixed up. But Victor shooting Squid is the moment. That's the moment. And I knew he was going to shoot him. I knew that they showed you that gun for a reason at the beginning of the episode. And so when he turned and shot him, the fact that he didn't shoot him point blank, like straight in the heart or in the head, it was off to the neck. And then, as you said, Shannon, had those moments. He's not a guy who's not, criminality is not second nature to him. Being good is second nature to him. That's why I was going to pay Squid off. And he said, I'm going to give you more next week. I'll give you more next week. So he was trying to handle the situation. I think you're right that Oz maybe in some subtle way was saying, like, handle your business. I got bigger things to worry about than your little small issues with Squid. Like, this is a small time guy. It's not worth my attention. So him handling it the way that he did and then broken up about it and crying about, and yeah, when he says, like, why'd you make me do that? I was like, oh no. Oh, is he going crazy? Oh, is this going to, but no, but then later you see him like Lady Macbeth, unable to wipe the blood off his shoes, like the shoes that Squid was talking about, the sneakerhead, though that blood is reminding him of what he's done. And I think that's affecting him. And so when he dances with Francis, it's a way to take his mind off, but that shows you he's a good person, the way he's willing to be Oz's brothers for Francis to help her. That's all good stuff. I don't know how you guys don't see this, but we have our different opinions and we'll see where it all leads to in the end. And you may be right, Shannon. They may break him in a way that sends him down the criminal path, which still makes me feel like I was right because that's a different situation. But okay, we'll see what happens.
I'm just remembering Lady Macbeth making a turn for the better at the end of that play.
Well, she made a turn into a knife, I think, for herself, right, to kill herself. But hopefully that doesn't happen. All right, let's move on to Sofia. Sofia's in full BDSM control mode with Julian Rush there. Theo Rossi, I mean, this must be a nice paycheck to just show up for a scene or two every episode, because that guy's been a series regular on a number of shows. But we see her in league with Sal because right after sex, she just walks into the kitchen, which seems unhygienic to me. But anyway, Sal is making food and doing whatever and cutting up the things. And right, because she didn't have sex with Sal. She has sex with Julian Rush, and that just seems weird to me. Anyway, Sal is clearly still angry over the death of his son, and they share a meal together. And he's frustrated that Oz is getting stronger, calls him a weed. And Sofia, a little bit, don't forget, just because Sofia became a badass doesn't mean she knows how to run a criminal empire. She's a little naive about how the gangs are doing stuff. And she said, well, they made a deal with us. And Sal schools her and says, listen, they're going to go where the bliss is. They're not maybe going to honor our deals all the time. So then Sofia says, then they need to let the gangs know that there's a cost for working with Oz. We see later they've cut the fingers off in the hang up, as we talked about, of Sullivan's people. They break into Oz's old place where Sofia finds evidence of Eve's connection to Oz as Sal works on his swing there. Sofia arrives at Eve's apartment and they have a heart-to-heart where Sofia corrects Eve that she's not the hangman. maybe she was. I don't know. There's a weird little moment there, and then outs Oz for hiding the truth about the deaths of these women that Eve knew personally, so that Eve wouldn't ask him questions about why he was working for the man who might have killed the women who Eve knew personally and worked with. So that was a really powerful revelation. And when Eve accepts that she's going to die, she asks Sofia not to kill her girls or hurt her girls. And when Sofia spares her and she's walking out, Eve tells her exactly where Oz is in Crown Point by the sea or something like that. And then we end the episode with Sofia looking on at Vic and Francis dancing with a crowbar in her hand. So Shannon, your thoughts on Sofia's actions in this episode and where it led to by the end?
I mean, one, the claw marks on Theo Rossi,
Oh my
the
God,
blood trickling down from these scratches. Some things aren't worth it. The scene between her and Sal in the kitchen, kind of a beautiful scene, because you have to think, growing up, the whole Falcones and the Maronis going at each other's for each other's throats. She probably grew up with stories about Sal Maroni, about how this guy is like just the devil incarnate, and now she's making food with him. Yeah. And the way that you can see what Vogel already pointed out, Sal's affection for his family, there is sort of a sweetness. Like, one, the fact that she's like, I can't believe you opened this incredibly old, incredibly expensive bottle of wine, something that Carmine would never let her do. Right. He's like, it's just gathering dust right there. And not only he pours her a glass, but then he pours the rest of it into the dish. And as she starts chopping vegetables for him, I mean, it's sort of a father-daughter dynamic, and it was really, really nice. And the whole storyline with Sofia is things that she didn't have growing up. The moment that they get into Oz's apartment and Sal turns on the fireplace with the music and they kind of share this look, she's like, yeah, this cheesy motherfucker over here. Like, again, just so much fun. But Krista Milioti, again, we've been talking a lot about Deidre O'Connell, who is fantastic. Yeah, I would have to think that all four of them, they would be in the awards chatter. Just because all four of them are so good, but just the way she moves. I mean, she is just so slow and so deliberate. Yeah. After she finds the Polaroid of Eve, and she's kind of, talking to the sex workers of Gotham, and I can't remember the Eve's girl's name. Roxy. Where she says, hey, I can do this for a price, and you just see this piercing stare that Krista Milioti has by the slightest head turn that you can tell you're thinking something right now. Such an interesting angle for the camera as she knocks on Eve's door, to have the camera basically on the ground looking up. So you can see the gun that is pointed at the door. And then we get to see Eve in a way we have never seen her, and how much you can already tell Eve's relationship with her girls is, for lack of a better word, the most healthy relationship in the show. But then you see her literally stripped down to nothing. Like this is the person who's underneath all of the the revealing clothes and the wigs. And Krista Milioti's, or Sofia's, not judgment, but summation of like really, this is what you do. And as she's basically trying to figure out, what is it about Oz? Like, what is this relationship? Because it's not love, because he pays you. And you start to understand the nuances and the complexity that the two of them share. I mean, the whole moment where she gets in Eve's ear is just repeating some things that Eve may or may not have said to customers of hers in the past. You're the best I've ever had. You're destined for greatness. Just such incredible work by both of them. Yeah. And the moment where Eve has accepted her fate, she's like, I know you're going to kill me. Just leave my girls alone. If this is what has to happen, just leave my girls alone. And the whole conversation about whether or not she is the hangman. And it's like, to me, she is definitely not the hangman. I mean, that is the little piece of information that gets Eve to fully betray Oz. It's like, I didn't do this. Your boyfriend's old boss did this, and your boyfriend kept it a secret from you. Like, just so good. And then the moment that we get this joyous scene of Vic and Francis dancing, and then yes, the slow reveal that Krista Milioti is there with a crowbar. I mean, again, crowbars very evocative from the Batman comics. So yes, the scenes all together are just so good. And again, we've talked a lot about specific actors. Clancy Brown is a fantastic actor.
Agreed.
Going all the way back to Highlander and Shawshank Redemption, but just a tremendous performer. And I'm glad that he's getting a part of this size, which he normally doesn't get.
I love you, but I don't know if Highlander is in the same conversation as great acting as like what he does in Shawshank. But
that was the first thing I saw him in.
Michael, your thoughts on Sofia's actions here and where she ends up by the end of this episode?
Well, I don't have the issues with her and Julian Rush that you guys do. I think you can have sex and have dinner. And I think that if people want to claw each other and that's what gets them off, that's super fine. So y'all can take your judgment. I'm like, you know what? They both look happy to me. Go get it. Go get it, Tigers. Have a good time.
You think they both look happy?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, you think this is a healthy relationship they're having?
Well, I mean, as far as you're going to define relationships go, like, it's a consensual relationship and he clearly likes getting hurt. So he's into it. Like, I'm like, if we're going to start judging relationships on this show on how healthy or unhealthy they are, this one's closer to the top. Echoing, like, so as much as I loved Oz's speech at the end and I thought it was absolutely banger, I think it is the third best scene in this episode. And I think these two scenes are the best. I think the scene in the kitchen and the Eve and Sofia scene are the two best scenes in this episode. A lot of what Shannon said, I mean, look, there is a intimacy to cooking and having Sal in the kitchen. Like, we only ever saw Sofia in the war room with Carmine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, aside from him coming in and holding her as a kid where her mom was dead, who he had just killed. But like, her adult scenes with her father were in the war room and it was all very, I want you to take the business, I do this. So her going into this room with her family's enemy who's sitting there casually cooking and even when she's like, do you want me to chop? Like, this whole, like, two people just cooking in the kitchen, having a conversation, just this warmth that is at odds with what they are talking about. Is fascinating. And yes, the fact that she calls out the bottle of wine and says, I can't believe you opened it, very different from what Carmine would do, but also establishes that this is an extremely expensive bottle of wine. Contrasting the beers later on or the breakfast that is being made in the Crown Point apartment with Oz and his mom.
Right.
Like, these people are drinking ridiculously expensive bottles of wine. Don't use those bowls. Let me get these bowls. These are the nicer bowls. Everything about this scene are two very, very rich people at the top of the pile in Gotham having a discussion that contrasts with literally everybody else in this episode. So it's part of, I think, what makes Oz's speech so powerful at the end when he's talking about it. Like, all we see, and then when they go to Oz's apartment, it's very funny. Like, the judgment that they both have, but they are judging this apartment by their very rich, very wealthy standards. Now, when Sofia goes to Eve's apartment, couple things. One, I didn't realize Eve's last name was Carlo, which you can't deny the fact that the very first Clayface is Basil Carlo. Now, I don't think that Eve is becoming Clayface. I don't think that she's going to be Clayface in the next movie, but everything that Sofia says when she see, like, what Eve does is she has costumes. She puts on different looks to look different for different people. So I think very subtly the nod to what Clayface does is kind of inherent. Also, as much as the crowbar is a very iconically Joker look, maybe I've just read Killing Joke way too many times, but when Eve opens that door, having a villain standing there holding a gun right at you is so evocative of what the Joker does to Barbara Gordon. But what's interesting, and I don't know how intentional this is, but I love Killing Joke. It's a very problematic story about a woman who is sort of used, who's killed and who attempted murder in a way to sort of just get something out of Batman. And I think that's what Sofia's intention is here. I'm going to use this woman to get at Oz. But then everything that happens as soon as she walks in changes the dynamic of this entire scene. Like, I think this scene is one of the crux scenes thematically for what the Penguin is. I mean, Sofia comes in and these two, like, I'm going to kill this prostitute and get to Oz. And then the fact that Eve is so casual about it and is like, look, you're going to kill me. What am I going to do? You're the hangman. The hangman is in my apartment. And when Sofia realizes that Eve thinks was the hangman, and that's that piece of information where she's like, you think I was the hangman? You think I killed those girls that are so important to you? And you let me into your apartment? Like, why did you do that? And she was like, because I'm trying to protect my girls. And you see Kristen Milioti like doing a calculation of like, I'm supposed to kill this woman, but I kind of respect that. And then giving the information about Oz and giving that information that the person that you care about lied to you about arguably the single most important thing to you. And just watching the calculation of these two women sort of constantly sizing each other up. But one of the things that Eve says really early in the scene, when Sofia is kind of judging her life, and she was like, you can afford to judge my life. Like you can afford to live in black and white. The rest of us can't. And that's really what it is here. Like, as much as we want to argue what Oz does or where the road that Victor is going down or what Francis feels about Oz or any character, these are all characters that didn't have the opportunity of wealth. Like Bruce Wayne gets to be Batman because he can afford to be Batman. Right. Whereas anyone else who loses their family in Gotham who can't afford it lives in this muck. And so watching these two women sort of size each other up, and even though they're sort of on opposite sides at the beginning, realizing that they're both women and they've both been used. So like, they're good. Like Sophia's like, I'm actually not going to kill you because I kind of respect you. And then Eve is like, Oz lied to me. You were very honest with me. Here's where Oz is. Like, I just think there was so much meat in this scene for both of them to play. And then, as I said, ending it with the crowbar, I was like, well, this doesn't bode well for anybody. But yeah, I mean, just throughout, like this whole episode is what Shannon said earlier on. Like, we're really eating well with both this and Agatha that are continuing to just give us more and more and more with all of these characters. Like, they're very, very different shows tonally, very different vibes, but both are so satisfying in their specific ways.
Yeah, I think for those of us who are fans of actors, it's nice to see them get a chance to stand out when they've been cast in a show. You know, Patti LuPone, last episode for Agatha All Along. Carmen Ejogo here, finally getting a chance to stand out a little bit more than just playing off of Oz and all this kind of stuff. Her and Kristen Milioti going back and forth, I thought was great. I do want to say, I do think there were a couple of moments where I felt Kristen wasn't quite 100% organically doing well in a certain moment of a little bit. I'm playing evil rather than being evil. So I thought there were some strains in this particular episode, but we'll see how it goes along. But Carmen Ejogo was fantastic here in that scene, as you said, and are calling out the wealth versus, you can judge me from your position, but this is what's coursing through this sense of like, well, no matter wealth or not wealth, they're all damaged people in some way or some shape or form. It's all just different what their damage is and how they function within the world of Gotham and especially in the criminal underworld of Gotham and how this is all going to work. And I did mention that her last name was Carlo in the first episode, Mike, but that was like 5 weeks ago. So it's no problem that you forgot that. But these are the things that you see that they're evoking really smartly. No, I'm just saying, I wasn't trying to.
So sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I love the way the show is evoking these things that we all know from the Batman series. Even the Eat the Rich storyline is very baked in to the Batman Gotham overall stories that they've told in numerous graphic novels and series. So it's fun to see it played out in the way that they're playing it out here. And I thought everything with Sofia here in terms of where she's going and what she's doing, she's still learning on the fly, whether it's from Sal or from Eve or her interactions. Like, she's still learning how to be this person. Her default is to destroy the thing in front of her, but the back and forth with Eve changes her mind. She understands where she's at. I thought she was going to kill Eve once Eve told her where Oz was. And I think that would have been full villain, but I like that they didn't. So that means there's more to come. And I mean, it could be Eve that turns into Batgirl. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Calling it a good actor. Who knows? Who knows? I'm saying. I mean, Victor riding a motorcycle, Batgirl rode a motorcycle. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, all right. Shannon, Michael gave his final words. Shannon, you have final words on this episode here real quick before we wrap up?
All good stuff. I'm really curious to see who pops up in the Batman Part 2.
Yeah, agreed. And I want to see who pops up in the last 2 episodes. I'm looking forward to that as we break it on down. For those who want to watch my reaction, it will be up tomorrow. But this is our spoiler review of this episode 6. Thanks so much for joining us and for watching and listening to us here as we broke this episode down. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yes, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at geek_buddies. On Instagram, at _geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media and confirm Victor gonna die, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. You think Victor's gonna survive but go bad? Follow Mike Vogel at MK Toon. You think Victor is gonna be Robin? Follow at Johnny Rocha at the Rocha Says.
I did not say Robin. I said heroic. Go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead and smash that like button below. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out all the amazing content he's got there. Leave your comments below. You think Julian Rush is going to turn into Alfred, Eva's going to turn into Batgirl, and Victor's going to be Robin? Let us know below. We're gonna see where everybody comes out. If you're listening to us on a podcast, leave us some comments and some stars to go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your social, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
You broke Shannon. You broke Shannon. Paul the candle wax now, sir. All right, anyway, let's get out of here. Thank you all so much. We love you madly. Don't forget we have our Agatha All Along reviews coming up later on this week, and we just dropped our main show, which is up now for you all to watch or to listen to on our podcast feed. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode of The Penguin on Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies.
Hey!
Hey!